There we are, and we are live streaming out to YouTube now, making sure our connection is good.
Mhm.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to the July Tech Talk with Bram, where we get to dive into not just blockchain, but some other cool tech topics. And we've talked about 3D printing, we've talked about general computer development, and today we're going to start off with a few questions related to Chia that Bram is close to and tied into well. So, welcome everybody. Thank you, Bram, for taking the time again. We always appreciate getting your thoughts here on these monthly tech talks.
Mhm.
Let's go ahead and just start off with one of the hot topics right now, and that is the new plot format. Is
Yeah.
there any more information you can tell us about that?
Yeah. Oh, so a bit of a semantic nit here, which is a little important, which I'll explain in a sec. It's a new proof of space format. So uh, the proof of space format does not directly dictate a plot format. You can use whatever plot format you want that kind of works with the proof of space formats. So what we are technically speaking working on is the new proof of space format. And obviously, the motivation for the proof of space format is our proof of space right now is a lot more grindy than we would like it to be. We want to well and truly really be all about proof of space with no like electricity and compute component of the whole thing. So we're iterating on what we've got to get us back to that. And it looks like we'll be able to succeed at that quite well because we actually understand what we're doing now and we have some great ideas and we'll be able to build something that is, um, it, we'll be able to build something that it doesn't feel janky. We're not adding patches on something, we're fixing the underlying thing with a few subtle changes, which are how we would have done it in the first place if we knew how, but we didn't back then. So, we know a lot more now. So I make this distinction because we're actually planning, it's looking like we're going to be planning two different plot formats for the same proof of space format. So it's very, very hard to get things to survive over a transition as big as like the change from HD to SSD. Like those are very, very different things in behavioral characteristics, particularly around seek times, that the seek times of HD are like around 10 milliseconds and are like orders of magnitude less than that for SSDs. So what we're planning now is two plot formats, one for HD and one for SSD. And the one for HD is going to be significantly less compressed than the one for SSD on the order of maybe like around 10%. Actually, probably let's say more like 15%. So somewhere in the neighborhood of 15%. Um, the and possibly as high as like 20. Um, but the SSD format, you just can't get it to work on HD. It's not going to happen. But the planned SSD format is much more compressed and at the cost of it only working on SSD, and it actually requires some non-trivial resources to plot it in sort of interesting ways. You need a lot of memory and stuff to actually pull it off. So, so the high trend plan is also that implementation is a lot harder to build. It uses some fancy stuff called Danish compression. I'm really happy to finally figure out how to get that stuff to work. Um, uh, because it takes a bunch of theoretical compression that was always bothering me that we didn't know how to do it and actually makes it happen. Um, but um, uh, it, yeah, but the plan is that we will build the relatively easy to build HD format immediately, and then uh, and then have this plan for the SSD format and then be able to kind of build it at our leisure. So we're making some decisions in the design that make it, well, a decision, and that makes it not absolutely require the SSD format, even though technically it would be marginally more confidence inspiring to make this particular decision that would make it SSD only, but we want to be able to support HD well and have an implementation out quickly. So that's kind of the general roadmap of what we're doing there. Yeah, that's going really well. We have a bunch of ideas on it that are really gonna make some look innocuous when you look at the spec changes that really make a big difference in how grindy the whole thing is.
Yeah, thank you very much. Great deep dive into the new proof of space format and how
Yeah.
the plot formats will reside on top of that. For anybody watching on YouTube, we do not monitor YouTube for any of the questions, so please do either jump into the Zoom meeting and ask in the Q&A, or you can join our Discord server and ask in the community feedback channel as well. Bram, to dive a little bit more into the new plot format, there's been some mention by Nick and yourself about a potential tool that will come out that users can start to kind of look at what makes up a plot format and the different aspects that lead to grinding.
Yeah. So Nick is hard at work on that. Although it's getting simplified a lot because the number of relevant attacks that matter is a lot less now. So there's a bunch of parameters that could be set of to that would you have this whole multi-dimensional thing where there's a long list of attacks and then there's a whole bunch of parameters you can set about it. And we've kind of come up with some techniques for the proof of space format that really obliterate most of the attacks. So the number of attacks is much smaller than it was before. But we will have a tool where you can kind of tune the like hand tune the knobs of what within the framework that we're working on. We have some decisions that we're pretty sure we want to do, and then there's some just like magic numbers that you need to set. Um, uh, my at one point I was asked where the magic numbers in BitTorrent came from. I was like, so most of the magic numbers in BitTorrent I pulled out of my ass. If you need magic numbers in your project, you can come to me. I have a lot of fiber in my diet. Um, uh, but no, you do want to have at least some kind of a sketch, some kind of, you know, some into a calculation that you did to justify a particular value. Um, so we're going to make a tool available where people can tune the potential magic numbers, and it'll show what the effects of doing those changes are on the whole on various attacks that can be pulled off on the thing. So they'll be able to see how that works. And we're in the process of building that. We've been we're not completely done yet on the actual techniques. So there's a little bit of things there. We might not be completely done yet when we make that tool available. But yeah, we want to give people some access to our process here and have some transparency so people can give us feedback on magic numbers we're thinking of and things like that. But the only reason we haven't already said what our plans are is because our plans are not fully baked yet. It's still working on.
Absolutely, absolutely. Of course, we won't touch on timing, but we do have one question that relates a little bit to the process of the rollout of the new plot format.
Yeah.
And just because there will be a time where there's probably going to be two different plot formats, or really in this
Oh
case,
yeah,
two
yeah.
different proof of
So the
space
plan
formats.
is all right. So the whole here's the process that we're going to do. We spent a while bike shedding on what we call these dates. So right now we are working on just getting information available. We will have a blog post out, right? And then at some point we'll have a chip out, right? And the chip will probably propose a lock-in date. The lock-in date is the go no go for is this happening or not, right? Um, and the goal, of course, of preparation before that is that we come out with a proposal which possibly incorporates some feedback that we've gotten from the community after we let everyone know what we're doing and give them the platform to give us feedback on it. Um, and uh, hopefully at that point, the thing is such a no-brainer that there's overwhelming support for doing it. That it's just clearly a good idea. In this case, maybe in this case, I don't think we'll be able to come to actual consensus because there's always going to be some people who like have a bunch of there's always going to be some people who have like uh, who have like a bunch of GPUs that they're using to farm, and they kind of like they're attached to that setup, and they're annoyed that we're partially obviating the utility of those things. So, but anyway, as much as possible, we want there to be broad agreement that this is a really good idea with no major issues happening in it, and then we can get buy-in on it, or at least acceptance. um, but hopefully overwhelming support. So, which is something you need for hard fork. So then there becomes some date, which is the lock-in date, which is really your go no go date for is this happening or not. Oh, once the lock-in date happens, the big thing that happens that day is the software that we ship from chia.net will have the hard fork activated in it. Okay. Um, that's the big change that happens on that day. Um, sometime after that, probably 6 months, is the activation date. So the activation date is the day when the actual blockchain format changes. So if you have not upgraded your software between the lock-in date and the activation date, your shit's not going to work. That's the big distinction there. um, but 6 months appears to be about right. We want that to be as short a time as possible, but no shorter. And 6 months is like how long it takes for the overwhelming majority of everyone to upgrade their stuff, even without there being anything urgent on it. Um, so then at at on the activation date, that's when a few minor changes happen. The blocks become totally incompatible. But in terms of things that are actually material, that's when new proof of space proofs start being allowed in it. Um, the there will be a formula for the relative value of old and new format proofs of space. Um, with new format possibly even being actually a little bit disfavored right at the beginning. And over the course of the next year, it will slowly ramp up to the point where um, new format is overwhelmingly favored towards the end of it. And at the end of the year, old format stuff is just going to be completely banned, although it will already have become likely effectively banned before that because it will just have become towards the end very rare to have a old format thing. So the idea here is we don't want any like flag day where there's a sudden change in net space, measured net space anyway. And we don't want there to be anything where everyone shuts off their stuff and starts replotting the things. We want kind of a slow phase in. We definitely got feedback that I proposed like 6 months for that and got feedback it really should be a year. So pretty sure time frame from lock-in date to it finally being done is going to be like a year and a half. When lock-in date might be, that's a little bit up in the air right now. So still still working on that. That has the obvious dependency on us having made our plans available to the community, getting feedback on them, and doing improvements and doing an implementation and getting a fully baked detailed proposal out and getting buy-in on that. So that is a process.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate the excellent overview. And I think a lot of people are pleased to hear that they have time and it's not one of those things where they're going to have to drop their old plots and immediately jump to the new one. So
Yeah, we really don't want massive disruption on the network. As much as I want this to get through as quickly as possible, there's a limit to how quickly is possible. So, yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much. And if anybody else has additional questions about the plot format, feel free to drop them into the Zoom Q&A or jump into our Discord community feedback channel, and we'll make sure that those get asked as well. We're going to move to something else that's Chia focused here and that is near and dear to your heart, and that's the on-chain gaming, or as some
Yeah.
people are calling it, the on-chain poker.
Yeah.
What are kind of the new updates on that?
New updates on that. Oh, by the way, the about it being poker, there's actually 3 games that I am implementing as the initial suite of games, which are meant to demonstrate to people what can be done in it because it supports two-player turn-based gaming. The thing is, you can do things in turn-based gaming that don't look like turn-based gaming, and it's not obvious exactly what the limitations are. Like you can have simultaneous play of the two sides, or what appears to be simultaneous play of the two sides, and you can have some kinds of randomness happening. But the limitations of what kind of randomness can happen when aren't super obvious. So making a suite of games that really demonstrates what's going on here and what's good for the medium. So the games are going to be there's Space Poker, which is just Hold'em adapted to the medium with a few interesting rules changes. Um, there's California Poker, which is it's a close relative of Chinese poker, of closed Chinese poker, old Chinese poker, and it's a fun but pretty simple game. It's basically the game that we're using instead of rock paper scissors, but it's a legitimate game of skill and a lot of fun. Uh, so that's the second one. That one has simultaneous play in it, which is kind of neat. And then there's the last one is calling it Crunk. It's going to be it's basically two-player Wordle. Both players pick a word out of the dictionary, and the other person tries to guess it. And you get a Wordle clue after each guess. And the fewer guesses you get it in, the more money you make. The more money you take from the other player. So that's yeah, that's that one. Um, uh, so that's the suite of games that I'm putting out with it. I think these are all. There's this thing about the ethos of poker, like what is poker? What is it like as a game? And people who are into poker tend to be very not into other games. Um, for and a lot there are a lot of other games played with a poker deck that poker players feel are nothing like poker at all. And I think these games here um, kind of capture the ethos of poker pretty well. You kind of need to do stuff like this because you have so few turns in these games. It's just necessary to have very, very few turns in a game because the backstop is you play on chain, which is really slow. And so you want as few turns in your game as you possibly can have. Um, and so you wind up having these like very Nash equilibria kind of things that your moves really make no sense whatsoever in a vacuum. Like the whole way you even think about what you're doing fundamentally deeply involves assuming that there's an opponent who you're playing against. That these are really very much not solitaire games that barely make sense for them as a thing. Um, uh, yeah. So that's okay. So what was that was me going off on a tangent about the games. What was the question again?
Yeah, just a status update as well.
Status update. Okay. All right. Um, so the status update is that there's the core of it. If you've been following along with what's been getting checked in, there's this thing called the channel handler, where I was planning on getting more people on the project after the channel handler was written and tested. Uh, the channel handler now is written and tested, and still don't have other people on the project yet because there's this other thing called the potato handler that it goes outside the channel handler that I decided we really need to have done before we try and get other people up to speed. But I worked on that with Art, so now there's a second person who understands what's going on with the gaming project. So it's now at the point where if I got hit by a bus, Art would be able to take the project to completion. So that's a step. But the plan is once Potato Handler is has tests written and tests are passing, then we'll be getting more people on it and developing it like a normal, like it becomes more like normal application development at that point to build it. Where right now it's a bit of a science fair project. So I'm trying to get past that point, but I mean, you can follow along with what's happening on GitHub with that getting checked in. We're getting pretty close to it. That not far away now. I don't want to make promises about time, especially on Art's behalf. um, but we're really getting there, so that's very exciting.
Thank you, thank you. Do you mind diving a little bit more into that potato handler? I know we had a question
Oh,
about that.
that's okay. So there's apparently a Zennial joke that the punchline of every joke is potato. Um, the it's a token ring protocol. So when you're talking to a peer, Um, you are have some collaborative state that you're working on with a peer and you're communicating back and forth with them. I'm using a token ring protocol for this because state channels basically have to work off of token ring protocols. Um, and it's just a good way of keeping state coherent in something like this. So every time you want to do an update, if you don't have the token ring, you ask the other side for the token ring. And then when you do get the token ring, you do the thing you want to do. I'm just calling it a potato instead of a token ring because I think it's funny.
That's excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and take a fun question. And
Uh-huh.
this is from Johnny Tarvinian.
Yeah.
What keyboard layout do you use?
Uh,
Just
I
your standard
used
US English?
I used Dvorak.
Okay.
So I've used Dvorak since what year would that be? Geez, since I think since 98. Um, so back then I did it just for health reasons because back then programmers' fingers blew up all the time. And I did not want my fingers blowing up, ending my career as a programmer. Um, Also just making it so I couldn't type, which sucks in every other way. Um, so I switched to Dvorak, which took, some days to do. Um, and I have at times used ergo keyboards. The thing is, what's happened with keyboards is all keyboards now are very ergonomic compared to the way they used to be. But they do it in ways that look very subtle looking at them because people get weird about keyboards that look funny. So um, the so the two big features that they're all doing now is the distance you have to press the keys and the amount of force you need to press the keys are both very low compared to what they used to be. Um, and you could do a little better. You can make them kind of spring up nicely and stuff, but all keyboards now, objectively compared to keyboards from 20 years ago, are way, way less bad for your fingers. The further things to further make keyboards more ergonomic are the next two big things to make them more ergonomic. Um, One of them is not done for a stupid reason. The other one is not done for a reasonable reason. So the one that's not done for a stupid reason is number one is you want to line up the rows of keys. So you want to take your Q, A, Z, and one and kind of make them all in a nice vertical column. That's not done because people say it's hard to adjust to. That is, I don't know what people's problem is. It takes me like 5 minutes to adjust to a keyboard with that change made to it. Um, the the big issue is neurotypicals and their freaking aesthetics. A keyboard where those line up looks cheap. It just physically looks like a cheap keyboard. And so people don't like making things like that because it doesn't make the keyboard look fancy. It makes it look the opposite of fancy. So that's why the keys aren't made to line up, which is really stupid, but that's what's going on. The other thing you can do is take the keyboard and chop it into two halves. So instead of kind of going like this, you're kind of going more like this on it. And then you can even kind of turn things a little this way. And you can buy keyboards that do that. Um, and those are a good idea. Uh, those are actually kind of annoying because if you ever want to pick up your keyboard and move it around and stuff, it doesn't work well when it's in two halves. So that's why people don't like that so much. But anyway, yeah, I have at times geeked out again and again on ergonomic keyboards, and ergonomic keyboards have become increasingly lame over time as everyone's gotten with the program of making all keyboards ergonomic and trying to hide their ergonomicness as much as possible. Um, so, yeah.
Gotcha. Thank
If you
you.
want
Thank you.
something ergo, you get a split keyboard these days, is basically the answer. And if you can, you get a split keyboard that has the rows of keys lined up.
Mhm. Absolutely
Mhm.
understandable. Yeah, thank you. Definitely going to dive into that Dvorak,
Mhm.
see how well that
Dvorak
works.
is what it's called. So yeah, there's different layouts of keys they're that are in various ways better than the standard QWERTY. The nice thing with Dvorak is it's kind of the standard ergo layout, so it's on everything, so you can always just switch to Dvorak on whatever you're in. Some of the positions of weird characters aren't exactly the same everywhere, but yeah, that's just what I use. Um, One time, John Perry Barlow posted a picture of a keyboard at the EFF with no keycaps on it, and me and a few other people are all like, "Well, the keys are in the wrong places anyways." One thing I will say for everyone, just as advice in life, is learn how to touch type. It's really easy to do. And it'll really improve your life. All you need to do to learn how to touch type is to make yourself not look at the keyboard while typing. And you will sometimes not know where a key is, but you make yourself try as hard as you can, not for minutes, but like at least a second or two with every time you want to hit a key, go, where is it? And only if you really don't remember where it is do you look at the keyboard and then hit the key that way. And just by practicing that discipline after literally a matter of days, you're touch typing. That's really not hard to do.
Hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. I remember back in my school days, of course, they gave us that nice orange sheet that would cover up all the keys and force you to do the alphabet while you're trying to do it
I
without
learned
seeing.
how to touch type in the sixth grade on a manual typewriter. And when I was young, it was this weird thing where it was still considered kind of girly to type fast. But us programmers didn't give a shit. I'm gonna touch type when I had work to do. um, but but that was, I think, the only really useful class I had in junior high, actually. So
Gotcha, gotcha. Well,
yeah.
thank you very much. I want to transition a little bit back to a side conversation related to
Yeah.
gaming, and
Yeah.
that's state channels. We know that
Yeah.
there's a number of different flavors of L2s out there,
Yeah.
and curious as to why were state channels chosen, and can you describe the difference between it
Well,
and more of these other L2s
well,
that we see?
there's these two really big things that are very different concepts. That there's um, payment channel, state channel things, which is what we're doing, and then there's like L2s, which are just like a big giant. There's some whole giant side chain sitting out here that's checking back in, and we're not doing that whole giant side chain thing at all. That's a huge amount of work and is a way, often just a way of punting problems. I think there's really an excessive amount of excitement for them in Ethereum land right now, basically because they just failed at scaling L1, which it was very obvious that was going to happen. But they failed at scaling L1 because that's a bad idea. But now they have this idea of they'll just use this magic bullet of they'll have a giant side chain L2 and they'll just scale that, which is likely to not fail as bad as the concept. You get some scaling off of that, but it'll be painful. Um, where this is not really a great solution for anything. That approach to things is very, very slow, right? And really can't get you that much extra it can't get you that much extra scaling. It's really almost like saying, well, we'll just bridge onto this other thing and then do stuff on this completely unrelated system that has nothing to do with our first system. Um, so we're not doing that. The point of state channels is you're doing net settlement, right? So you're just like how, banks, regular old fiat banks, just do net settlement between each other for a scaling solution. So this is that same thing. You're doing transactions with someone else, and the thing that goes on chain, and these are done in real time, and the thing that goes on chain at the end of this whole process is is the netting out of this. So the blockchain doesn't have to record every stupid little thing that you did. Um, and that's what we're doing. This is, this is what Lightning is, right? This is the same approach as Lightning. Um, it's what we're doing here is state channels instead of payment channels, really just because Chia supports games and Bitcoin doesn't. There's just like very limited stuff you can do in Bitcoin script. And the uh, both payment channels and state channels, you have these kind of like virtual coins um, that are made real and go on chain in the event of a problem so that an unroll happens. And the only real difference between a payment channel and a state channel is how sophisticated those coins can be. So in Bitcoin, they're always HTLCs, and in Chia, they can be game coins.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, cleared up a
Oh,
lot there.
but also, here's an interesting thing about the approach we're taking. I got warned from actually people working on Lightning that it's painful and horrible working on such things for a reason that's just not technical at all. Like your big problem is getting your state channel, your well, payment channels funded in that case. And that requires people pony up real money and have real world business relationships to make it happen. And that is painful and horrible. um, so you really don't want to do that. And so I was like, okay, cool, I can work with that. So instead of building a payment channel network, I'm building gaming with a plan that two people who want to do a session have one transaction at the beginning of the session to get it started, and then another transaction at the beginning of the session where they get their winnings or remaining money back at the end of it. And that this the benefit of this is the downside of this is you need to have a transaction go through whenever you start and end a session. The benefit of it is you don't need to build a payment channel network because you're not trying to do routed payments. So that's hence the approach we're taking.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it clears up a lot for sure.
Yeah.
I want to do another segue off to something not necessarily Chia related, but
Sure.
we have a question from Rigidity actually,
Yeah.
and it's which code editor do you use as your daily driver? He's been dabbling with NeoVim, but it's hard to be productive in it.
Oh, I am using VS Code. Um, the ChiaLisp syntax highlighting in VS Code, we know it can use some improvement. It's on the list of things to do. Art has a lot on his plate right now. Um, I don't care much about what editor I use in general. It doesn't matter to me. I use the text editor as a text editor, and I switch over to the command line to run commands when I'm debugging and stuff. Um, the so VS Code, I'm on a Mac and I just use plain old VS Code. So which doesn't have all the build and everything built in. So it works fine. It's a good text editor. I recently switched from dark mode to light mode because in my old age, it's so annoying how bad information about vision is. In my old age, the my night vision has really gone to shit. And as a result of that, my eyes are much more dilated when I'm looking at night things, which causes this astigmatism I have on my left eye to get invoked. Uh, and then I basically see a double image of everything that I'm looking at, like a faint one. This is a weird thing to have happen. At some point, my lens on my left eye just got bent, just got folded. But I'm pretty sure I was told I had an astigmatism in that eye when I was younger, and they just hadn't explained to me what that meant. Astigmatism is a catch-all term for like weird misshapenness. In this particular case, it's literally just bent, and I'm seeing a literal double image out of just one eye. But when my eyes are not fully dilated, uh, that bent part of my retina, my lens, is occluded by my iris. So if I use everything in a lit room in day mode, I don't have this problem. Or at least have it a lot less. So I switched to doing that recently. That's my hack. I guess I could get glasses for it, but easier to just use use ye old built-in pinhole camera on my face. Um, yeah,
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you. I hadn't realized the effects of dark mode, and you're absolutely right about how it dilates the eyes and changes how
yeah.
you're actually looking at the
It
screen.
only matters if you have an astigmatism, but a lot of people have astigmatism, so that could be that this is a common effect that of people seeing much clearer in daylight is because of this phenomenon, which I had to figure out for myself instead of reading about it somewhere, even though it's like this is a really basic thing. Why is this just not explained to people that some people, not everyone, but some people see a lot more clearly in daylight because of this phenomenon.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. And for anybody who is joining us now, if you are watching the YouTube live stream, we do not monitor the live stream for any questions. Please do either jump into the Zoom chat and join the Q&A in order to submit your questions, or inside of our Discord channel, we do have the community feedback channel that can be used as well. I would like to transition back to a little bit of Chia focus stuff here. And we have a question about the iOS Signer app. And I know you're not as closely tied on a code base in that
Yeah,
regard, but can
nothing
you
to do
just
with
give
it.
a high level view as to where we're at with the Signer app and
I
what we're
am
looking at?
really not to get the right person to give the update on this, so I have no idea what our timetable is. I literally don't remember if that opcode has kicked in already or what, but we added in SecP opcodes to Chia's, which is a soft fork because they pass or fail directly, so that's kind of convenient, in service of helping those things pass. I don't remember if they're in already or not. But the idea is we want to make it so that people can use the built-in security functionality that's in iOS devices to make them be secure signers for them.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, definitely looking forward to seeing that come out. And of course, after that's released, the future plans to integrate with Android as well once the team has time to develop on that
Yeah,
side of
yeah,
things.
I myself am not the one on top of that. I've been working on plans for our V2 custody solution, which are pretty exciting. I really like geeking out on custody arrangements. And it's looking like we will be able to have consolid consolidated custody arrangements that we will have like the standard way for vaults to do custody, which is appropriate all the way from like um, your own personal funds all the way up through like a large multinational bank keeping track of their stuff, like fit that all in the same framework of features for them all to use. So that's going to be really great. I think we'll manage to pull that off.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And do you mind just diving a little bit more into kind of what challenges that you're running into with the custody solution and
Oh,
all the different moving pieces?
yeah, the funny thing is it's all about it's all about business logic actually. It's about specifying what should happen. Like when various security breaches occur, what do you do and what are the consequences of all of that happening? And working on it is terrifying, not because what you're doing is bad, quite the opposite. What you're doing feels really good. It's terrifying because it's like, wait a minute, this is security 101 stuff. Why have I never seen this done ever? Like, it's like, come on, people. And it's so weird because people who talk about win, win, win and all that crap will opine about business logic and stuff. And as a result of which, I find that even just the phrase business logic cringy. And here I am, really completely unironically geeking out on business logic for these processes. Um, so it's a matter of the hard parts aren't so much on a technical level. They're more business process and UX. Like getting all the subtle edge cases completely hashed out, which is a lot of skullduggery, cloak and dagger shit to figure that out. And then it just really specifying everything that might happen and what you want to have happen in every situation. And then get this described in a way that's coherent enough that people can actually use it, like figure out what's going on as you're trying to take advantage of these things. So you really want it to be that someone who is not an engineer, likely not even technical at all, is able to, someone who's like, CEO of a bank or something, or CEO of not even a bank, CEO of some random company is able to just like personally configure this thing to handle like many millions of dollars um, in a way that they're comfortable with what it does in every scenario and actually get it appropriately configured and deployed and actually be able to handle security breaches in a reasonable manner.
Very exciting for sure. And I know that there's going to be a lot of tie-in with that and all of the other signing operators that have been added in so that you have multiple different ways to sign within this custody solution as well.
Sure. Yeah, that's actually a really minor point because it specifies like signers, and so some of the signers can just be SecP signers instead of BLS signers. It really doesn't make a big difference for the code base.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And everybody loves to hear you talk about 3D puzzles. This particular user is hoping you can start with the Rubik's Cube and maybe go into a few of the other 3D puzzles that interest you.
The Well, gee, I don't know. It's like Rubik's cube is going way back. I've invented many puzzles, a lot of twisty puzzle things. There's yeah, I've been doing that for many years. So if you ever saw old Oscar Van Deventer videos or even not so old ones, he's often like, "Oh, so this is an idea from Bram Cohen," and he it shows the thing. So, um, the there's many different genres of puzzle I've been making. I was just at a puzzle gathering, and there's some stuff that I'm working on now, kind of as follow up to that. There was, I mean, I've shown some stuff on these things before. So, the thing I recently invented and made is this thing here. So this thing is, did I show this before, like last time? Yeah, you did. Okay. So this one here, for those who didn't see last time, it's kind of just moves like this. And the thing that's neat about this mechanism is it actually like mechanically enforces that things can't go past the end of the thing. So that's kind of neat. It took forever for me to figure out how to build that. It's a pretty simple mechanism, but it was not easy to figure out. I was actually just working on, so this is not really an invention of mine, but this is a simple burr right here, which this is it's called a tick, a turning interlocking challenge. There's this standard format that people make burrs that are in the form of a 4x4x4 cube. And this one is, and it's called turning because there's a turning step in it. So I had previously made a burr puzzle that was a 4x4x4 with the outside completely filled in that's printable, meaning it has no overhangs when you 3D print it. So 3D printing is really convenient. You just print and there's no extra material or anything. You just pull it right off the bed and you're done. And so I managed to make that be a level 4. And I was talking to someone at this thing who's good at these tick things. And I showed him the one that I'd made and sent him that design, and he kind of riffing off of it came up with this thing. That one does not have turning in it, and so he came up with this design here that actually is a 4x4x4 printable burr that has a turning step in it. It just kind of, yeah. So it goes like you can see here, it goes there, there, and then there, and now it kind of twists off like that. That's how it comes apart. So yeah, I got to post this one. Yeah, I have to post this design so other people can make it. These designs are really great for just other people 3D print because you just say go and comes off the 3D printer, even if it's a crappy 3D printer, and you get this nice thing. So yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know I've loved following your insights and your recommendations for 3D printers as well. It changed the entire way I clean my print bed even.
Yeah, well, so at this thing, I was at people were talking about it, and so right now, if someone's like new to 3D printing and just kind of dipping their toe in the water, the question of what 3D printer you should get is like, oh, you should get a Bamboo A1 Mini, is what you should get as like a cheap printer. It's, like on the order of like $250. So it's like not a tiny little toy, but it's kind of like on the order of what low end 3D printers have always cost, but it is not a low end printer itself. It's actually produces quite high quality output. Um, and that one actually has some neat features. Like when it starts up, it makes a bunch of noise and it has a microphone in it and it figures out the resonant frequencies of the room that it's in and tries to avoid those when it's printing. It's kind of so it doesn't sound very loud, kind of a neat trick.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. But my printer now, the thing I upgraded to is a Bamboo X1 carbon. So I got the fancy machine, but that's because I've been using it a lot I've been doing 3D printing a lot for many years now. And so I got the fancy machine.
Absolutely.
Compared to like being a car guy, it's really nothing. It's like
Exactly. And you get to reuse your own materials now, right?
uh no, that doesn't work very well.
Okay.
No, I've looked into that. No. Do not recommend even attempting that with anything resembling current technology.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I think a few people here want us to get back onto some Chia topics.
Yes.
And we have one about CAD-T, and it's what is your current impression about the CAD-T market? And the follow-up question to that is how do you see the integration of tokenized carbon credits? And I know, again, this is a little
Um,
extended outside of your day job here.
yeah, this is kind of outside of my domain. I can tell you, the general vision is that we want to take high quality carbon credits and get them tokenized on chain, and then have this whole project to make bucket versions of these where we take a whole bunch of high quality ones, smush them all into one asset that's all tokenized together, and trade it on chain, and with the goal of having real liquid markets in high quality carbon credits enabled by our offers functionality. So there's no one fixed venue for these things. There can be venues for them, but you can pull on and off the venues for them without massive um, transaction fees, and there can be competing venues for the actual trading going on. That's the plan. It's going a little slow, but yeah. That is not what I work on day to day. It's
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I know we've already started to see some of the tokenized cats come out, and there's a wallet, a different wallet included for that. So definitely exciting and to see all of that progress and
Mhm.
looking forward to kind of that one market concept being brought to carbon credits. You
Mhm.
touched on offer file and how offer files can be very powerful for that type of concept.
Yeah.
We have a question from Logan as to is there any plan to create a offer files 2.0 with more generalizable requirements to fulfill offers? And I think this is hinting at like, hey, I have this NFT or I have this cat token, and instead of requesting a specific XCH amount, can we make it so it's a variable XCH amount where I can say anywhere up to this amount, or this is my minimum that I want from it?
Well, I mean, the question is what is the utility here? Because whoever's buying it might just set it to the minimum. We have been discussing sophisticated offers functionality, more having to do with like malleability of these things. Because if you have a vault, right, the vault is signing off on these things. So there's a question of what operations on the vault um, cause the offer to become invalidated, right? And so you might want it to be that like multiple offers can be accepted by the vault in turn, right? Um, and so we're building limited malleability right now, just so that the vault so that not everything automatically cancels everything else. So you kind of have the same kind of stepping on other's toes between offers that you're used to without using a vault. um, but it should be possible to be a lot more sophisticated than that. That you can do things like you make a bunch of pay to singletons for your vault, which are all just like size zero, and you're just using them for replay prevention on these things, so that you can have uh, and that way you can have a lot of offers in queue, and they really reliably do not step on each other's toes as they're going through.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, definitely excited for that. And and kind of what Logan's follow-up is in that regard is going towards that malleability and the ability to spend not just a very specific coin, but say you have one NFT and you say, I want to trade this NFT for any NFT in this particular collection.
Yeah, that right. So that would be sophisticated functionality of offers, which of course can be built. We just haven't built it yet. A lot of these things, the hard part is building wallet support. Actually, um, we still have a lot of tech debt in the Chia wallet. Like a Chia wallet, the way we're building it is fundamentally more difficult than the equivalent thing in like Ethereum. Because in Ethereum, there's no smart anything that your wallet is supervising. It just sends funds to smart contracts and just kind of trusts them. And in Chia, the idea is the local wallet actually has a lot of logic around these smart contracts, or smart coins in this case, in it, and can handle them, which is great from a security and reliability standpoint, uh, but makes it a lot harder to write the wallets.
Absolutely. Just being able to handle all of the different coin logic and
Mhm.
recognizing the coins in general.
Yeah.
Now, on the aspect of developing in Chia Lisp, we have a question about Chat GPT or other types of current AIs or LLMs that can generate Chia Lisp. Have you taken the time to look through any of those? Do you see any
They
that are
they
leading ahead?
cannot in the slightest at all right now. So I've tried doing that. They just assume that Chia Lisp is like a regular Lisp, so they're trying to write these like very side effect heavy Lispy code. And just they do take something they do write stuff that vaguely looks like Chia Lisp. They do get some of the Chia Lisp quirks in there, which is kind of impressive. Uh, but like there's just no corpus training set that about building things that work in the coin set model and that whole framework of thinking about things. And so they just have nothing in their training set that will help you code in anything vaguely like this right now. So yeah, pretty limited utility for them writing GLS. It's like if you ask it to do something where it has like multiple copies of code snippets in its training set that already do that, it will often give you really impressive answers because it's just, reading, it's memorized the answers and is telling them to you. But for things where LLMs can't do that, they tend to just kind of fail.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. And I know JD Justin had touched on that previously as well and said it's just not a good aspect right now, but
Yeah,
after a good enough training set is out there, then we could see some good improvements in that regard.
yeah.
Now, this one, I don't know how much we really want to touch on this question, just due to logistics, but it comes around to, are you providing any liquidity with your own personal XCH? And do you dabble in
No,
anything in
I
that
don't
regard?
have any personal XCH. Like that's not a thing. I own equity in Chia the company, which has like a strategic reserve of XCH. I do not personally own any XCH.
Thank you. Thank you. Clears that up very well.
Yeah.
And we are getting near the top of the hour here. If anybody does have some last minute pressing questions, feel free to ask them in the Zoom Q&A or join our Discord server and ask in the community feedback channel. We do not monitor the YouTube live stream for any questions on there. We have a question regarding one of the community projects that is out there, and it is, have you heard of Bepe? And what are your thoughts on it?
I I really don't know anything about it, so I can't.
Gotcha. My understanding is essentially Pepe, the frog, and it's
Yeah.
been adapted for you, for a Bram Pepe, if you
Oh,
will.
okay.
Yep, yep. So you've kind of become a fad out inside of the community project world here for different designs.
Oh, okay. I don't know about how I look. So someone the other day said I look like Dave Matthews, which I've gotten before, but yeah.
There you go. Now, as a general overview, what are your thoughts on how Chia is doing over the last few years in comparison to your expectations for where you think it would be at?
Yeah, well, the obvious thing is our initial coin price was way higher than expected, and then it crashed down. But that initial price was kind of just because there wasn't enough liquidity in the market, and we tried to do things to keep that from happening, but didn't do enough. The problem is if we'd have done stuff to really keep it from happening, it would have been perceived as us just handing out massive quantities of Chia to people who were farming before the network was even out, and that would have looked really super insidery and sketch. So, I mean, the benefit of that is it caused people to do all this farming, which has given us a lot of security on the network and caused actual research to be done on our proof of space stuff. So now we can fix it. Always good to have those kinds of things fixed sooner rather than later. The updated proof of space thing we're doing should be good for a really good long time, I believe. Um, the in terms of development, the price stuff aside, we're kind of around, I think, where I hoped. At least I didn't. There was always this big product question of what are we going to do that's going to build real value, right? And it's like, well, we can build good custody arrangements. That's a great thing to do. We can make market liquidity, which we figured out relatively early on that we could do offer files. Uh, And then it's like, okay, well, what else do we do? So we're building data layer, or we've built data layer now. We're working on deployments of it. And I feel quite good now about having a pretty good answer to the question of like, what are we going to do to get people to really use this? Um, or what else are we going to do to get people to really use this, which is gaming. I really like this plan for it. So I'm quite excited about that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, very exciting for sure. And I know I'm personally looking forward to seeing these gaming primitives hit the chain and seeing how the state channels operate for the
Yeah.
peer-to-peer
Yeah.
gaming.
Hey, well, what I'm aiming for is what I really hope for is people try it and find the games just addictive and fun. If people get mad at me because the games are too addictive, I've done my job. That's what I'm shooting for.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. And I don't have any other questions coming in, so we will go ahead and start wrapping up here. For those who joined us, thank you very much for taking your time and asking the excellent questions, very poignant questions in some regards there as well. We have one of these tech talks with Bram every single month. So we'll have another one around the mid of August. Please stay tuned for that. We also have a couple of other community spotlight events that'll be coming up in the near future. We should have one with Circuit DAO, and I believe we're going to get Rigidity back up on stage to talk about his Rue language. So some exciting things coming around the corner. Make sure you stay tuned for the announcements in Twitter, Discord, and even on LinkedIn. Bram, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you for letting me deep dive into a number of these topics and pick your brain as to the future of Chia and also your interest in different technologies and puzzles. So, thank you all very much. I hope everybody has a wonderful day and feel free to jump into Discord with any additional follow-up questions.
Thanks.
Thank you all.